Superman!
General, would you care to step outside?
Hey guys, this is Critical Redemption here with another movie review, and I'm going to continue the Superman series. We are going to jump into Superman 2, Richard Donner's cut from 1981. This was originally planned as a back-to-back production with the original Superman, but Superman 2 suffered a number of behind-the-scenes setbacks, including a change in directors and the loss of Marlon Brando as Superman's Kryptonian father, Jor-El. RIP. In spite of these troubles, guys, the sequel delivers as a satisfying conclusion to the first major Hollywood comic book story, forming a reasonably cogent whole story with its predecessor. So I want to also talk about the whole film overall and how it was. Where the original Richard Donner film established the pieces of Superman's world, the sequel began by Donner but completed by Richard Lester gives the Man of Steel more formidable villains and superpowered action worthy of his powers and abilities. Also, another thing I wanted to say is, at the same time, it offers a definitive look at the strange, impossible love triangle of Clark Kent, Lois Lane, and Superman himself, guys. One of the weaknesses of the original Superman films is the buffoonish presentation of Superman's arch-nemesis Lex Luthor, entertainingly but campily played by Gene Hackman. And like I said in my first review, Gene Hackman is a great Lex Luthor. This Luthor is just too much of a lightweight to pose as a credible threat to the last son of Krypton, especially surrounded by the likes of Otis and Miss Tessmacher. Superman 2 compensates for that by unleashing a trio of Kryptonian supervillains, which are exiled in the alternate dimension of the Phantom Zone by Jor-El himself, and so-called on Earth, led by the ruthless, evil General Zod, a formerly scenery-chewing Terrence. Another thing I want to say is he's evil as hell, guys. Upping the ante against Superman 3-1, the trio crash Superman's adopted homeworld, and things get bad. A lot of cosmic destruction, conquest, and vengeance against the son of their jailer. Meanwhile, where Earth's greatest champion, following an entertaining sequence of events at Niagara Falls, Lois Lane has at last seen through the token disguise of his alter ego Clark Kent, and unable for once either to fly away or hide behind a pair of Harold Lloyd spectacles, he is forced to confront his feelings for her. And then again, guys, then comes the fateful choice. And you know, when choices come, it's very hard. For reasons that aren't spelled out but could be guessed at, Kal-El is told by his long-dead mother, played by Suzanne York, that as Superman, he cannot be with a mortal woman. We all know that. And to be with her, he must become an ordinary man, giving up his powers forever. Of course, the movie doesn't really mean it, but that's what she implies. So if you guys didn't know that, that's a little short answer I'm giving you guys. Here, of course, in the essential dilemma of Superman and Lois Lane, at least as the characters were classically conceived before their 90s wedding in the comic books. I also want to say Superman, aka Clark, loves Lois, but Lois' feelings for Superman are complicated, and may be as much as the super as about the man as the line from Clark in the nasty diner sequence hints. Yet, like any celebrity or power player, guys, Clark wants to be loved for who he really is. Don't we all want to be loved? Not just what he can do, after all. If Lois can't love Clark without his cape and tights and superpowers, then does she really deserve Superman? Just think about it. At this time, the aurora of nerdy, bumbling incompetence of Clark, not to mention his penchant for undercutting himself by giving it to the temptation to flirt with Lois in uniform makes it hard to fault Lois for feeling only platonic affection for her fellow reporter. And that's why she doesn't really get attracted to him, because he tries too hard. The other more serious problem with this sequence is Kal-El's insuperable unique responsibility to the world. And what I mean by that is, in a way, Superman's dilemma is like the choice between the clerical state and marriage. To exercise these powers on behalf of mankind, one must give up the kind of domestic happiness. Yet, in keeping with the much noted Christological parallels in the Superman films, Superman is in a way more like Jesus himself than a priest or bishop. There's only one of him, and the fate of the world is in his hands. So he's kind of like this whole God, Jesus-like superhero. In fact, film writer Peter has extended that much noted Christological references in the Superman films by suggesting that Superman, forsaking his powers to marry Lois Lane in Superman 2, parallels Jesus in the Last Temptation of Christ, temporarily coming down from the cross to marry Mary herself before realizing his mistake is going back to complete his mission. So, I mean, it's a little confusing, but you all understand it. As deeply problematic as this is the Last Temptation, it works dramatically, in my opinion, in Superman 2. Superman is a Christ figure, yes, but flawed, fallen one, which is fine for Superman because he's only a Christ figure, not Christ himself. At any rate, guys, the untimely arrival of the Phantom Zone villains drives home to Kal-El in no uncertain terms that the Earth needs him more than Lois does. He realizes he must go back, and because the story requires it, guys, he's allowed to do so. Then follows the battle royale beginning in the streets and climaxing in the Fortress of Solitude. We are back in the Fortress of Solitude, guys. Like so much else about the film, the resolution of the battle doesn't entirely make sense, yet manages to be dramatically satisfying. It might not fly in a comic book movie today, but these early films, we don't have to understand exactly how the Kryptonian crystal builds the Fortress of Solitude or restores Superman's powers, or how the Man of Steel manages the neat reversal with the red sun energy generating molecule chamber. That's a whole lot to take in, but even the film's capping cause of Deus Ex Machinima, the amnesia-inducing super kiss, goes down easier than it might have, in part due to the widely improvised use of non-canonical superpowers throughout the film. Object levitating finger beams, the strange rules of Kryptonian hide and seek, etc., guys, as well as a somewhat fairy tale tone established by the first film. Also, another thing I have to say about this film is the Lester sequences may be overstated. True, they seem more evident in some places, but even the original Donner film displayed considerably toner shifts from the ultra-serious bits on the Krypton and the Fortress of Solitude to the slapstick bumbling of Otis. Together, Superman and Superman 2 refine a classic American hero for decades to come, while at the same time honoring who he is and perhaps always will be. Subsequent attempts to follow the footsteps of these films, including A-list 2 additional sequels, as well as the Batman films of Tim Burton and Joe Schumacher, only in a unique achievement. Superman 2 isn't perfect, guys, but it's a comic book movie and it remains an awesome film to me. A touchstone that cannot be touched by any other film besides the original Superman. My final verdict for this film, 5 out of 5. I would give it I'll give it a 4 out of 5. I'll give it a B+. It's a good film, but it makes a little few mistakes, but it's a great film overall. It's not as good as the first one, but it's there. It's up there with the first one. Superman 1 and 2 are my favorite. Hope you guys enjoy this review. I'm kind of getting a little nerdy here with all this stuff I said, but hopefully you guys subscribe, rate, comment, let me know what you guys think. Next review will be Superman 3. Alright, I'll talk to you guys later. It's a bird, it's a plane, it's Superman. Peace out, guys.